So we're going to begin, as is our style, with some meditation. Sit comfortably, with your spine erect. Relax your body and mind. Place your attention on the respiration, first of all. And then withdraw your attention further inward, even more away from your senses, to your heart chakra. Just focus on the mental consciousness, one part of the mental consciousness, watching, seeing the space between the thoughts, recognizing and holding on to the clear light nature. Whatever appears in your mind, use it as an aid to reaffirm that clear light nature. The very existence of thoughts, appearances, conversations in your mind can reaffirm to you that the mind has this clear light nature. So don't focus on the thoughts, but on the implication that your wisdom derives from that. Let go again and again. Whatever comes to your mind, even the appearance of your body. How you let go of the thoughts that are appearing to your mind is not simply by just relaxing the mind, because then you let go of your apprehension of the clarity also, but developing wisdom that understands the nature of the mind within which those thoughts are arising has to be clear light, like vast space, and then focusing on that, just turning your attention away from the objective thought to the nature of the mind that's perceiving it. Let go of them that way. Within the space of the mind, there's no front or back, left or right. There's no color, shape, no constraints, dimensions, or boundaries. This is my inner nature, my conventional nature, the nature of my mind, capable of being the site of the development of all good qualities, the nature behind which all the faults can be removed, transitory faults, very joyful, very inspiring. Just as we strive for happiness, just as we desire for it, desire happiness and strive for it, all living beings are exactly the same, exactly equal with us. Having been our mothers in numberless lives, while still in samsara, they still are not free of all faults, while still bound by the afflictions, turning within cyclic existence, never finding real happiness, although they might find periods of satisfaction that we envy. There's nothing within cyclic existence that we have not experienced before, that's a real source of happiness, that's reliable. In order to bring them to the highest, long-lasting, blissful happiness, everlasting blissful happiness, we have to attain that ourselves. It can't be given like pieces of bread or donations of money or meals. We have to lead sentient beings by becoming Buddha. So for that purpose, I'm going to meditate on emptiness, as was taught in the Heart Sutra. Not just the emptiness of the self, but starting from that, and in analogy, understanding what the self is empty of, meditating on the 5 aggregates also. So again, within that clarity of your mind, try to recognize the object of negation. A sense of the self that appears to and is grasped to exist by itself from its own side, not just imputed by the mind, but having some kind of inherent existence of its own. Almost concrete and findable. Not necessarily the one that seems to overlap with your form or your intellect. That might be grosser versions of this object of negation, appearance of the gross self. But here one that the innate mind grasps to exist from its own side. The innate ignorance. The I that's the experiencer of our sorrow and our disappointment. The I that anticipates happiness and strives for it, maybe experiences relief. Very subtle. Now, if such an I were to exist like this truly, inherently from its own side, it would have to either be inherently one with the aggregates or inherently different from the aggregates. Try to recall that second point after having identified the object of negation, establishing the pervasion. If two things, such as the inherently existent self, if it did exist, and the aggregates, any two things either have to be identical or they have to be different. If it's a truly existent self, it would have to be either truly one with the aggregates or truly different. If it were truly different, it would have no relationship with the aggregates whatsoever. as though any experience to the aggregates would not necessarily register to the self. The self would not identify with the aggregates, which is clearly not the case. If the self that we're observing and it's grasping, if that self that's the conceived object of our grasping were to exist the way that it appears, it might also be identical to the aggregates, truly one with the aggregates. It would have to be one in every way. And as there are at least 5 aggregates that make up our being that Lord Buddha taught, either there would have to be a multiplicity of selves, or as there's one self, there would have to be just one aggregate. But there's a difference between the body and mind. There's more than one aggregate. Bringing back to mind, if the I that's appearing, that I'm investigating, were truly existent as it appears, it would have to be truly one with the aggregates or truly different than the aggregates. It's not truly one, and it's not truly different for the faults that we've mentioned, many other faults. Therefore, the only conclusion is that this I that we conceive of to have a particular existence, true existence, does not exist in that way. There is no true existence of the I. The truly existent I is non-existent. In developing that wisdom, the grasping to the appearance of this I is diminishing. The wisdom that is its antidote is increasing. That wisdom that we're focusing on, we're trying to develop our mind into, is perceiving just the non-existence of the conceived object. Experiencing just some relief, the knowledge of the non-existence, like space, a non-affirming negation. Just the absence of the object of negation is a possible existent. Now, unlike the meditation on the clear light nature of the mind, where we're experiencing something like vacuity, but actual conventional phenomena, here we're experiencing a non-affirming negation, which is the meaning of emptiness, an ultimate truth, the ultimate nature of the self. And the spaciousness that we experience is developed not through analyzing the mind to see its conventional nature, but first of all by analyzing the self to see its ultimate nature. not only the self, all phenomena are empty of true existence, such as the five aggregates. The basis, especially our own five aggregates, the basis for imputing the self. If even the basis is not truly existent, that can reaffirm even deeper the experience of the emptiness of the self. There's not even a findable, truly existent body or feelings, discriminating faculty, compositional factors, other mental factors. Even the consciousnesses, the primary consciousnesses, do not exist as they appear to the mind and as they're grasped as truly existent. Again, think of all the phenomena that we consider to exist with our limited mind now. Infinite space, the physical world that we're familiar with, perhaps the Buddha realms, the hell realms, the various realms of samsara, and the pure lands. They too are empty of true existence. We can conceptualize them, they have an appearance to our mind due to our karma, but there's nothing there, like a phantom, like a mirage, from its own side. Nothing. The self and the basis for the imputation of the self, the aggregates, the entrances, which include all phenomena, 12 entrances, our five sense faculties and our mental faculty, their respective objects, have only nominal existence, nothing tangible, findable, real, the way that the mind conceives. Including the consciousnesses in that sixfold scheme, makes 18 dhatus, all phenomena included in that. They're empty. No phenomena exists from its own side. Not even the Four Noble Truths or the Two Truths. Even emptiness is empty of true existence. So here, letting go comes about not through just taking the mind and placing it on the clarity of the mind as before. Here, the vacuity arises as a result of this inference, wisdom consciousness, understanding that the object observed itself does not exist that way. The object disappears as we focus on that non-existence, non-affirming negation, emptiness. As Chandrakirti implied, as Lama Tsongkhapa explained, phenomena do have a verifiable validity on the conventional level, although it doesn't exist truly. How do phenomena exist on the conventional level? As mere imputations by a mind imputing or designating with concept or name the phenomena upon a valid basis of designation. All phenomena are dependent arisings. To go back, the self that we viewed before for other reasons is non-truly existent. The self is not truly existent because it's a dependent arising. Can't be truly existent. If it were truly existent, it wouldn't arise in dependence on a mind apprehending the basis and conceiving of, designating the phenomena. Merely that. If it were truly existent, it would have a mode of existence from its own side, not just existing as a designation or imputation by thought and concept. This truth the Buddha saw, it liberated him. Due to his kindness, he taught it to the world. So with a thought to share this understanding with others, motivating to participate in the class to better understand emptiness, so that we could, even in this lifetime, develop conventional bodhicitta, having understood the I does not truly exist. There's no I to be cherished, no truly existent I to be cherished. With that intention or motivation to participate in the class tonight, to realize emptiness, to develop, in order to develop bodhicitta, to practice the bodhisattva deeds, to attain enlightenment for the welfare of all, to share this understanding. Let's begin by reciting the praise to this wisdom that we're trying to cultivate. Praise to the Mother, the wisdom gone beyond, Prajna Paramita. Here the first word, ma, doesn't mean mother, doesn't mean not. Sometimes a different spelling means not. Masam doesn't mean not conceptual. Ma here means able to be said or spoken of in words. Sam means imagined or conceived. Jo means expressed. Ma sam ju me sherab parojin ma ke mingat nam ke ngo ni so rang re yeshe chu yu chen tu sum galway yu chakselo tadyata gate gate para gate parasam gate bodhi svaha. So that mantra encompassing the perfection of wisdom, especially for those of highest intellect, highest wisdom, highest faculties. Let's recite the entire Heart of the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra. Thus did I hear at one time the Bhagavan was dwelling on massive Vulture's Mountain in Rajagriha, together with a great community of monks and a great community of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Bhagavan was absorbed in the concentration on the categories of phenomena called perception. Also, at that time, the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara looked upon the very practice of the profound perfection of wisdom and beheld those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Power of Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra, said this to the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara. How should any son of the lineage train who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom? He said that, and the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara said this to the Venerable Shariputra. Shariputra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom should look upon it like this, correctly and repeatedly beholding those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Form is empty. Emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form is also not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, consciousness are empty. Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness, without characteristic, unproduced, unceased, stainless, not without stain, not deficient, not fulfilled. Shariputra, therefore, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, no consciousness. No eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomenon. There is no I element, and so on, up to and including no mind element, and no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance, and so on, up to and including no aging of death, and no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and dwell in the perfection of wisdom, the mind without obscuration and without fear. Having completely passed beyond error, they reach the endpoint of nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three times also manifestly, completely awaken to unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment in reliance on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequaled, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering, should be known as truth, since it is not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared, Tadyata gate gate para samgate bodhi svaha. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, should train in the profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagavan arose from that concentration and commended the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara, saying, well said, son of the lineage, it is like that. It is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom just as you have indicated. Even the Tathagatas rejoice. The Bhagavan having thus spoken, the Venerable Shariputra, the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara, those surrounding in their entirety, along with the world of gods, humans, asuras, Gandharvas, were overjoyed and highly praised that spoken by the Bhagavan. So because there is no attainment, the bodhisattvas rely on and dwell in the perfection of wisdom. Because there is no attainment. There's no attainment? What are we doing? Why are we putting so much effort? You've been here every week. Let's go.
And conditions to arrive at the place.
But isn't there some attainment then? It says there's no attainment. What does the Heart Sutra mean? I think that's what we should try to understand from the Heart Sutra, that all these phenomena, although it can be interpreted in different ways, different people interpret it in different ways, as Chandrakirti and Nargajuna, Aryadeva, the great Madhyamaka saints, as they interpreted it, that phenomena do exist conventionally. This is how at least Lama Tsongkhapa explained, how Chandrakirti explained. Phenomena do exist. Even attainment exists conventionally. But that conventional existence is something very, very subtle. It's almost at the beginning, in a sense, it's better to say that it doesn't exist at all. Then when you realize it doesn't exist inherently, because that's what you're taking as your object of observation, then you can kind of understand how it does exist conventionally. But even to say, sometime at the beginning to say, almost sounds like a cop-out at the beginning, no? I say, phenomena don't exist inherently, but they exist conventionally. So the cream cheesecake, what is it? Vanilla chocolate, raspberry that you brought? White chocolate, vanilla raspberry cheesecake. You might say, well, it doesn't exist truly, but it exists conventionally, and I want to get some of that conventional cake. So, you always have to, I think you always have to understand conventional existence correctly, having understood emptiness. Maybe that's why you always, you have to, out of emptiness, you try to understand the conventional existence. And that's how the bodhisattvas try to understand their perfections. Their giving, their practice of patience is merely imputed. It looks like you, a truly existent you at first, is exerting some effort to be patient, thinking of the reasons, not just holding in the anger, right, or the displeasure, but trying to develop wisdom to see that the object of this irritation doesn't exist the way that it appears. Remember when we talked about antidotes of anger? On the conventional level, we need to have temporal antidotes, because we can't realize the emptiness right at the beginning. So we have to have temporal antidotes to overcome our attachment, our addictions, and our anger and our irritations. Patience, ultimate patience comes about through the perfection of wisdom, understanding there is no object of harm or irritation inherently existing that causes, there's no inherent harm that it might be causing me. There's no inherently existent recipient of the harm. But before you understand that, you need to be able to apply the conventional temporal antidotes. So as we practice in the Lan Rim, first of all, you practice on the conventional level, but it's not really understanding the fine conventional truth yet. You know what I'm saying? We deal, before we understand emptiness, we have to be dealing with karma and understanding of past and future lives, dealing with conventional realities. Those are conventional truths, so those are not ultimate truths, right? Trying to understand them correctly. Sometimes in the teachings it says the right conventional view, the right worldly view, is the view of the law of cause and effect. Usually we talk about right view means the right view of emptiness, right? Or what's it? Right view, right? Right view, left. The right conventional view, right worldly view means what we start off in as we progress on the path. But that's not, say if we have the right worldly view of karma and past lives, and we have some kind of understanding the need to generate bodhicitta and so forth, that's not yet the fine understanding of conventional truth. You understand that, right? Okay. That comes about, as I understand, from having understood emptiness. So first we understand grossly, then we understand emptiness. Then out of emptiness, we can start to understand how phenomena do exist conventionally. Not just the interrelationship of karma and so forth, which is true, but only on a conventional level, but how phenomena are dependent arisings. There is no inherent existence. There's no findability of the phenomena the way that our mind believes. Like, we really think there's a real world here, isn't it? I mean, it seems so unassailable, right? Irrefutable. But if the Buddhas were to perceive what we're perceiving, there would be no inherent appearance. This appearance comes about because of our karma. So the Buddha doesn't have that same kind of contaminated karma. So there's even the Buddha, it's not as though the Buddha sees this as a celestial mansion from its own side, like this is a house and therefore the Buddhists see it still as a house but pure. That's just a practice in development of the mind through, say, in Tantra or something, to try to have pure view, because we can't overcome this appearance right now when our eyes are open, when our ears are alert and so forth. But phenomena has no particular appearance. The Buddhas know conventionalities, what we call conventionalities, the appearance of conventionalities, by knowing how that dependent arising appears to us. They know the causality, how things have evolved over time because of cause and effect with their omniscient mind. And they know how they appear to us, or how they appear to animals, or how they appear to spirits, to their clairvoyance that knows the minds of others. Is it okay? So how are we doing? Have some twinkling? Yeah, you have a question? Good.
It's regarding the karmic seeds, and I was rereading my notes on April 30th, and
You were reviewing your notes on April 30th, or the notes? Okay.
Today,
yeah, right.
of April 30th, and you mentioned that karmic seeds were an appearance. They came as an appearance of the end result of an action. And by that, did you mean that it was an appearance in the mind stream? And where my thought went from that, in rereading that, was, is it a memory? I mean, what is this appearance in the mind?
So maybe what we were talking about at that time, it might have been that we were talking about dedication. Because when we meditate on the emptiness of the three spheres, I say, even the karmic seeds that we conceive of, because we can't perceive our karmic seeds. Venerable, can you perceive your karmic seeds? Not yet. Not yet. So I didn't mean that there is an appearance of them from their own side, like you can see your glasses, or I was just thinking, and I couldn't even see my glasses if these were the right pair of glasses, because I can't see in this light. It's not as though that they appear to our minds, but we have an understanding from the teachings of Buddha that our actions have left some energy on our consciousness that the Buddha calls seeds. I mean, he didn't use the English word seed, but the word, I think bija in Sanskrit means seed, and in Tibetan we say sabon. So I'm not sure that's the Sanskrit word. That's one of the words that means seed. But so it leaves something like a seed because it has a potential to first of all to grow, to start to sprout before it actually gives its final result. So karmic seeds, let's say, that are placed on our continuum, or some energy that's placed there, one of its qualities, that, as we study in the Lan Rim, is to increase over time. Just left there, it's not just doesn't stay with the same potential, it increases. That's why, for instance, if we're born in the lower realms, even if for eons we might not create any strong virtuous karma, born as an animal and as a spirit, and hell and hell and hell and spirit and hell, and bouncing back and forth. Sometime when those heavy negative karmas that we've created the big ones have been experienced, they've been like harvested. Some small seed that we created to be born as a human has slowly gotten big enough that it's the biggest kid on the block. There's still a lot of heavy negative karma, but just by the fact that this one hasn't been eradicated yet, that can throw us into the upper realm. That's why a life of leisure and endowment, this kind of basis, is so difficult to attain. It's almost like it's found just once, said in the Lan Rim teachings, right? So when we talk about the appearance of these seeds, that means when you're dedicating, you're trying to think, due to this merit. So you're thinking there's some merit that's been accumulated, which is essentially karmic seeds on your consciousness. So you do have a conceptual mental image of that. If you're going to be dedicating, you've got to have some idea. Otherwise, it's just say, this, which I don't see, I don't have any imagination of, I want to give this result. I don't, So you have to kind of conceive of it, and also conceive of the point of dedication. Also, when you think of the end result, you try to dedicate. The most skillful dedication will be one that has the most encompassing result, because that can help to preserve the karma from being exhausted earlier than the final result, right? That's the main purpose when we dedicate. It doesn't necessarily, just ordinary dedication doesn't protect it from anger. We've mentioned many times, right? Do you know why?
You get destroyed by anger.
But when you dedicate, in the Lan Rim, doesn't it say if you dedicate your merits, they can't be destroyed by anger? Yeah, there seems to be some debate amongst various, traditions or lamas. The Lama Tsongkhapa made it very clear that if you look very closely at the scriptures and so forth, it seems very clear that even if you do conventional dedication, that can help to prevent the karma from being exhausted in just a certain limited number of ripenings in the future. If you aim toward a very distant aim, the example, the story we told before from the Lan Rim, the two fellows who were walking to Lhasa. You know the story? Can you repeat? So one of them, the big trader, had a big bag of barley tsampa. You know what tsampa is? Here? Barley. They roast the barley grains and then they grind them, and that's a cereal that they eat, that with their Tibetan tea or with other things, with milk or something. Most Tibetans, when they're traveling, will carry tsampa with them. Even many of them love tsampa, even the lamas. When I was in Tibet, I remember we stopped at some out-of-the-way place. There was a Chinese restaurant, And the Tibetans, they usually didn't have enough money to eat in the Chinese restaurant, but the tourists would, because they would make these kind of omelets and stuff that the tourists like. But the Tibetans who were outside, there were some people from Kham, and there was one guy saying, "Somba," like "Somba." So he had a big bag of samba. So the trader, and the two guys going to Lhasa, the trader had a huge bag of samba, barley samba, good quality stuff. That's a good one. The poor people can't afford barley samba. They make it out of lentils, like peas or something. So the poor guy had a pea samba, lentil samba, or bean or whatever. That is, you roast these more inexpensive seeds or lentils, and then you grind those. It doesn't taste as nice, doesn't have the same energy. Barley has a lot of energy. So he just had, in fact, he not only was it low quality, he just had a little bag. And the trader had this huge sack. So the clever guy, maybe he'd studied Lan Rim, I don't know. So the poor guy, he said, well, look at, rather than us carrying these two separate bags, let's make it easy. Let's put our sampa together, and I'll just take out enough until mine is gone, and then I'll stop taking out of your bag. And the other fellow, maybe he hadn't studied the Lan Rim. Maybe he was just dumb, I don't know. He said, yeah, sure, okay, makes sense to me. So they mixed up the two sampas, but of course there's little specks of green all the way through the bag. So even after there was a week, 2 weeks, and this little bag of sampa should have been depleted, and the trader said, well, look at, I think your sampa is finished by now. And the person said, no, look at, there's still some in there. Until that's finished, I get to have this. So this is example sometimes of given, if you dedicate your merits to enlightenment, it's not like you're cheating the Buddha, or you're cheating, something like that. But the until that goal is achieved, as you dedicated it to a very distant goal, incredibly, like the welfare of all sentient beings, the proliferation of the Dharma for all time, and so forth. Until those goals are achieved, that karma doesn't finally ripen. It will have effects along the way that help to bring that event about. So that's the usual meaning of dedication. When we dedicate in the emptiness of the three spheres in order to protect the merits from being destroyed by anger, we have to do so in such a way that because anger arises out of self-grasping, so out of ignorance. So if that merit has already been conceived of as empty of true existence, it's somehow protected from later grasping. It's almost like it becomes transparent. I don't know how else you can explain it, kind of rainbow-like, and it's preserved in that way. So we have to make both the conventional dedication, otherwise there's no link between the karma. That's kind of the correct worldly view, right? And then meditate on the emptiness of the three spheres. So perhaps that's what was being talked about there. Yeah, I'm not sure. Okay. Tenzin, did you have a question? So
it's kind of out there.
It's out there, isn't it?
Yeah. I think about this stuff. If
That's good.
conventional phenomena cease to exist due to mass extinction of us, would we all be empty?
Would we all be empty?
Would we realize emptiness? And how would it fit into the Buddhist epistemology? If this planet, this sphere that we live on, we have this mass extinction, how can you reincarnate? And everything would be kind of empty because there wouldn't be anything.
Well, from the Buddhist view of cosmology, the Buddhist said that this is not the only universe that has existed or will exist. Universes evolve, they come into existence, they have a certain period of abidance, and then they start to disintegrate. It's almost like they expand, and then there's a period when they start to maybe contract. And then there's a period at the end when there's total destruction, and they disappear. But then out of the karma, the collective karma of sentient beings, the universe will Depends on what cosmological view you use, whether Kala Chakra or others, whether the same atoms exist or whether the same energy exists. But somehow the universe begins to evolve again, and we will appear within that universe according to our karma, or in some other universe according to our karma. So even if this universe was destroyed, say the Democrats shot bombs all over the place, probably the more likely story, right? I'm being facetious. I'm sorry. Okay. So say there's just DDT and all sorts of terrible radiation, and human beings and animals and even plant life die out. Still the hell realms exist. The Preta realms exist. The God realms exist. Maybe the animals would be extinct also, but the form and formless realms of this particular universe with its own Mount Meru and 4 continents, even though the human realms might be extinct, there might be some situations like that, but there would still be these other realms existing. This world would still exist. At the end of the existence of this universe, still sentient beings, our mind streams still exist, and until our karma has exhausted, there will still be the evolution of some appearance to us of a subsequent universe that will evolve and that we will take rebirth in according to our karma. Sometimes at the beginning of the universe we take rebirth as very, very subtle human beings, almost light-like bodies. And they begin to, over time, become grosser, almost like the Christian story of what's it called? Garden of Eden. So at the beginning of the human existence in any one universe, humans have light-like bodies. Their minds are quite refined. The delusions are not yet strongly manifest. But as time goes on, the delusions start to manifest as food appears, and people start to partake of that, gross food, and their bodies become grosser, and then a difference in gender occurs, and then other kinds of phenomena occur. This is explained, at least as explained in the Buddhist cosmological view. So we have a very difficult meditation to do during tea break today, and that is the meditation on the emptiness of the white chocolate raspberry cream cheesecake that the Tibetan class students have offered. So I want you to try to, with both bodhisattva understanding of emptiness, and if you have some tantric practices to experience in bliss and void, try to not get carried away, and we'll continue after that break. Okay, now that you've experienced some mahasukha or dukkha, depending on your viewpoint. Okay, Don, did you have a question? What were you saying? No? Frank has another question? Yeah.
Well, we were discussing when you said something about when we train in a certain way in order so that when that's not my question. So that when we eventually try to come to the correct view of conventional existence, which is very subtle, we might train in a certain way to try and get to that view. So the discussion we were having was about the physical laws that seem to be manifest in our universe. The chemistry and physics and nuclear stuff. Matter phenomenon seem to obey all these rules and laws, and they obey the same laws for me as for Don and for everybody else. But is it possible that being without our collective karma, it's not just the perception of matter that changes, but maybe the physical laws as well. So that maybe for certain other beings, solid matter isn't solid, and nuclear physics doesn't obey those laws, and chemistry doesn't work the way it does.
Maybe to a certain degree. When in the beginning of the chapter on wisdom in the Bodhisattva Charyavatara, when they're explaining certain verses, they say how reality for yogis, those who've realized emptiness, can be completely different. But like if you have certain psychic powers or understanding of emptiness, you're not constrained in the same way. Not just intellectual understanding of emptiness, let's say direct realization and so forth. Still, the law of cause and effect still holds. there's no contradiction. If you have karma, even the Buddhas can't take away your karma. You have to either purify it or experience it or put it in such a situation so it doesn't ripen to protect yourself until you can purify it. But I think the yogis and yoginis, they can have different, the world can appear different to them because because of their tantric realizations, and then they can manipulate things in a different way. There's a famous incident you may know of, Lama Tsongkhapa, when the Great Prayer Festival, the Monlam, was going on in Lhasa, which I think Lama Tsongkhapa, one of his great deeds that he instituted again, what we usually, every year we always do was it 10 days after Tibetan New Year? Is that when it starts, Venerable? And Dharamsala also, Monlam? Mm-hmm. Up till His Holiness begins to teach on 10th or something like that. So, yeah, so in those days, Lama Tsongkhapa had instituted during his life, again in Lhasa, this tradition of the Great Prayer Festival. And at one of them, there were so many butter offerings being made in the Jokang, the main temple, as I remember, that the butter, there was like a residue of butter all around, and the heat was so great that it ignited, and there was a danger of just this conflagration, a huge fire. And Lama Tsongkhapa meditated, and with his meditation on his own inner elements, the fire element and so forth, was able to cause the fire to diminish. So it's possible. Their reality, they can affect the outer world. It doesn't violate the law of cause and effect, but it's not something we would be able to do. Okay. So, for auspiciousness, let's finish the last lines of the sutra. So we're in the final part where Avalokiteshvara has finished his answer to Shariputra. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound perfection of wisdom like that. Or you could say thus. Thus should the Bodhisattva Mahasattva train in the profound perfection of wisdom. Then the Buddha, we mentioned this last time, right? Just to reiterate, the Bhagavan means the Buddha, arose from that concentration, the concentration that he had been absorbed in and which had inspired Shariputra to ask the question and Avalokiteshvara to answer. And he commended the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara, saying, well said, son of the lineage. It is like that. It's just like you've explained. It is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom just as you have indicated. Even the Tathagatas rejoice. So here we mentioned this last time, he is reaffirming, saying twice, well said. Sometimes you might, if you read the Tibetan or the Sanskrit, looks like he might have said well said 3 times, but it looks like one of them is just the word. He said well said, or he commended, is how it's translated here. In doing so, he's kind of verifying or validating that what the explanation that Avalokiteshvara has explained is indeed not just correct, but exactly correct, and that as the Buddha, it was inspired by the Buddha's wisdom, and can be not only is it correct, any of the Tathagatas, those who have gone to thusness, Tathagata, same gata, like we say gate. Gata is a past participle, so Tathagata means one who has gone to thusness. In Tibetan we say Dejin Shekpa. At the beginning of, in all of the 35 confession Buddha's names, right? Rita, do you do, Venerable? Dejin Shekpa, Dejin Shekpa, each one is. So in the actual 35, in the actual 3-heap sutra, which is the name of the sutra that those 35 Buddhas are explained by Buddha. Only in the original Sanskrit, the name Tathagata only comes before a couple of them, a few of them. But Lama Tsongkhapa, when he did, you know this incident, right? When Lama Tsongkhapa did 100,000 prostrations to each of the 35 Buddhas. Have you done 100,000 prostrations yet? So 35. So you've got something to go 30. So each of the 35. So it's what 3,500,000 prostrations or more. And while he was doing this, I don't know at what point, he had a vision of the Tathagatas, the 35 Buddhas, but without their heads. And so he thought, uh-oh, I've done something wrong. And so he added the epithet Tathagata to all of them, not just to the ones that were in the original text. So in our Gelugpa liturgy, it has Tathagata, the one gone to thusness, on all those names now. So then he had vision of them, and he had vision of all. I mean, just incredible. And vision of, Buddhapalita and all of the lineages of the middle way, and they blessed him, and he saw the 35 Buddhas and all these amazing things. Yeah, this is in Oka in Tibet. If you ever get a chance to visit Tibet, you can go off the beaten track. You can find where Lama Tsongkhapa did retreat. There's an actual place, and although the actual stone that he actually did prostration on may not be the actual one, it said that there's a mandala there that's shaped like a radish, sort of flat on the top, kind of pinkish, and then it comes down like this. That's like the original one that he did mandala on is not there. So he didn't have a nice golden shiny one. And he supposedly, when he was cleaning it with his arm, as you do at the beginning of the mandala, he did so much that he developed sores and so forth on his arms. But so even the Tathagatas rejoice. Let me see if I can find. There was one little point in here when we talked about the epilogue in. This is not in the commentary. The two Tibetan commentaries don't mention much about this, but this is on page 121. This is in Donald Lopez's own kind of composition. Here I'll just read what he said. Avalokiteshvara completes his answer to Shariputra's question with an exhortation to bodhisattvas to practice the perfection of wisdom, at which point the Buddha rises from his meditative absorption. It was by the power of his entering into samadhi on the profound that Shariputra was able to ask his question, and that Avalokiteshvara was able to provide his answer. With that now completed, the Buddha rises. Means not just, I don't think it means he gets off his seat, but he rises from the meditation, so he awakens from that, or appears to. The Buddha alone can explain the meaning of the perfection of wisdom. Others cannot. What does that mean? No one else can explain the perfection of wisdom? Well, not in the same way that the Buddha can. Certainly, bodhisattvas, Arya bodhisattvas, can explain the meaning of wisdom, but not in the same way. The actual perfection of wisdom is the omniscient mind. So only the Buddha can explain that. Avalokiteshvara explained, and Shariputra listened through the blessing of the Buddha's samadhi. The Buddha praises what Avalokiteshvara has said, saying, "Well done," twice, to express his pleasure. So at least he's kind of agreeing with this kind of interpretation. He said twice. Thus dispelling the doubts of any who might question the validity of what has been taught. Child of good lineage, it is like that, he says. Actually, it says son of good lineage. Well said, son of the lineage. He says, indicating that if the profound reality is understood, the mind is freed. Even the Tathagatas, the Buddhas who have thus come and thus gone, who have understood reality and taught it accordingly, are delighted by what Avalokiteshvara has taught. That's kind of the meaning. even the Tathagatas rejoice. So even the Buddhas of the 3 times would not teach any differently. I mean, they might teach different words or emphasize different things, but they would not teach anything contravening in opposition to what Avalokiteshvara said. Then the Bhagavan, having thus spoken, the Venerable Sharidvati Putra, here it uses a longer name again, so that was one of the main participants, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara, again emphasizing both his, one way of understanding why the 2 names Bodhisattva Mahasattva, one sense Bodhisattva emphasizes aiming for enlightenment, and Mahasattva emphasizes out of compassion, although they both have both meanings. The Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, the second participant, those surrounding in their entirety. So this includes all of the other humans. When it says those surrounding in their entirety, so there's a certain group of sangha. Were there some bhikshus, ordinary bhikshus there? What do you think, Venerable? Like, there's no Hinayana practitioners there, are there? Yeah, Shariputra, obviously. And so, some of his mates. Some of his mates. Okay. Yeah, that's because at the time the Bhagavan was, what is that? The Bhagavan was dwelling on massive Vulture's Mountain in Rajagriha, together with a great community of monks and a great community of bodhisattvas. So, when it says monks, it's actually bhikshus, bhikshu sangha, great bhikshu sangha, which traditionally in the Hinayana scriptures usually included all of the disciples of the various groups that had joined the sangha in various circumstances. There were groups that when Shariputra and Mahamoggallana joined, a lot of their disciples of their former teacher came at that time, and when the Buddha subdued some other people. Oh, there's a little raccoon outside the door. He's come to, all those in their surrounding. Yeah, they've included the cheese. Yeah, maybe he smelled the cheesecake. Yeah, all those including raccoons. So the Bhikshu Sangha was there for this Mahayana Sutra, although they were not the main aim of this Mahayana Sutra, of this Prajnaparamita Sutra. And also the Bodhisattvas, some of whom were ordained. Not all of the Bodhisattvas, not at all the Bodhisattvas were lay people, but some of the Bodhisattvas were lay people. Are you thinking he might come in the door? Are you? Just in case. Very smart. Okay. Hard to say. When did the bhikshunis? Because there were no even novices before the bhikshunis were ordained, were there? And so, wow, she's really. So one would, you could historically check. You'd want to analyze at this particular occasion whether there were. Certainly, there might have been in some of the sutras. They might have mentioned in some of the sutras. I don't know that there were bhikshunis present. But the Prajnaparamita was taught at a particular time. It might have been at a time before the Buddha's stepmother and his wife came to ask for ordination. So maybe there were no ordained females, but they certainly would be some that had taken the pratimoksha vows, the vows of a layperson, or the 24-hour vows and so forth. Might have been that there were bhikshunis. It doesn't say explicitly. Okay. I think in the Sanskrit it says bhikshu sangha. Yeah.
It says because all the bodhisattvas, monks, laymen, and lay women were seated there, page 122. Mm-hmm. Doesn't say any ordained. It says laymen and lay women.
Right. But that's literally from the sutra. It doesn't mention, but Venerable's just asking. So you could analyze, you could check, and if it doesn't explicitly say that, you might use that as evidence in your PhD thesis to say that it was written before the nuns were ordained. I don't know. use some kind of a historical analysis. So those surrounding in their entirety, so this is mainly talking about the humans, and maybe also some animals like the raccoons and so forth. So usually we talk about have you heard the expression the fourfold Sangha? Venerable, do you know the fourfold Sangha? What the fourfold Sangha means? Fourfold assembly. So it means, how do you say, male and female, fully ordained, and male and female novices, I guess. Right? And so it doesn't say that here, but usually. So there was the bodhisattvas also. Some of the bodhisattvas were supposedly from even other universes that had come through their psychic powers. You know the explanation when the Prajnaparamita Sutra is taught, whenever the Buddha teaches the Prajnaparamita Sutra in one universe, when one emanation, the Manakaya is a raccoon, is teaching, the worlds of the 10 directions shake, and the bodhisattvas in some distant universe ask the presiding Buddha in that universe, what's happening? And the Tathagata says, in the Saha world, that's the name of this world system, Shakyamuni Buddha is turning the wheel of Dharma, turning the perfection of, teaching the perfection of wisdom. And some of them, maybe like Tenzin, will say, well, I'm going then, I need a little variety in my life. We were talking in the break time, right? It's nice to get more teaching. So they come and, because the perfection of wisdom, and with their psychic powers or their divine ear, they listen. So some of them, remember when we talked about Rajagriha, Vulture's Peak, why it's called Vulture's Peak is because sometimes, one of the interpretations is because when the Prajnaparamita was taught, the bodhisattvas were, and other arhats, even Hinayana arhats and so forth, with their psychic powers were arrayed in space, levitating, listening, because the actual place is very small, right? Have you been to Vulture's Peak? It's relatively small, right? I mean, it's not so big. Even when Lama Zopa Rinpoche was teaching some years ago, when Geshe Lama Konchok was there, it was just totally crowded, almost getting pushed off the edge. Do you remember? Yeah, were you there? So that's one reason why, one of the etymologies, there's different reasons why it might be called Vulture's Peak. Then along with the world of gods, so the way that they translated it in one of the commentaries, he talked about the gods, what did he say? Let me just continue what he says here. Everyone, Avalokiteshvara Shariputra, and the entire audience was filled with admiration about what the Buddha had said. Some say that even the Buddha shared in the admiration because he saw his disciples had grasped the main meaning of the perfection of wisdom. Of the audience, Vimalamitra says, because the bodhisattvas, monks, laymen, and laywomen were sitting there, it says all those surrounding. The gods are the 4 royal lineages. What are the 4 royal lineages? And so forth. Actually, it means all the gods, Indra and Brahma, but what does that mean, the 4 royal lineages? The kings of 4...
Are those the lineages that are depicted in... I was looking at my Kala Chakra book, and in the center of the moon disk, surrounding it are the various lineages, the 4 different lineages, behind, in front, and to each side. And one of the lineage I recall is the lineage of the blessings. The lamas of the lineage of the blessings, something like that.
So it's not talking about those lineages. No, not the word lineage comes in different places. The word he uses here, royal lineages. Do you know what this is talking about? So the 4 kings. In fact, we have picture. Who is that back there, Venerable? Vaishravana. Is that Jambala? Jambala? That's not one of the 4. I think that was one. There were They were made when His Holiness was coming, the 4 pictures. I think that's one of the kings. Jambala is not one of the 4 kings. So there's 4 protectors, the directors